This special episode is brought to you without commercial interruption by our friends over at Civil War Trails. Winter is a great time to explore America's Civil War trails, so just bundle up and hit the road and experience our nation's history. Civil War Trails is the world's largest open-air museum, offering over 1,350 sites across 6 states. Drive the Gettysburg Campaign turn by turn, paddle to Frederick Douglass's birthplace, or hike to remote earthworks and artillery positions. Visit civilwartrails.org to request a brochure and explore their interactive map. Follow Civil War Trails and create some history of your own.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Gobble, 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 everybody. It is Thanksgiving.
Oh, man, that just made the soundboard. First 20 seconds.
That was pretty good, Matt. I like that. It is Thanksgiving, and as you prepare or are recovering from gorging yourself on turkey and stuffing or dressing or pumpkin pie and mashed potatoes or sweet potato pie.
Now you're making me hungry.
I know. Let's go to Thanksgiving dinner now. We are here to help you put a little bit of a historical context into all of these things that you are doing, all these things that you're eating, and specifically, or as Owen the Clapper says, pacifically, right, Owen? There you go. What Thanksgiving was like during the Civil War. And as always, and this is, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is the last of the holiday X in the Civil War series with Matt Borders. Next year, we're going to start a new series with Matt, which is going to be just as exciting. What?
Holy days of obligation.
That's right.
That's right. Holy days.
All the feast days. We're gonna. There's a lot of them, folks. I'm going to be here every week.
That's right. Holy days of obligation in the Civil War. That's pretty good. No, so it's, well, we have an idea. We're not going to say just what yet because we want to make sure that we're actually going to do it. But anyway, so that's next year. We've got another series. But right now, this is the last one here. Matt, it has been quite a whirlwind year with you. We started with Christmas.
We did.
People loved it so much, I said, Matt, let's do another one. And then we picked Valentine's Day,
yep.
Or as our buddy Cam says, Valentine's Day. And what after that? It was,
yeah, it's definitely an M there at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Then there was St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day, yep.
We didn't do Easter, though, did we?
We addressed it, but we didn't spend a lot of time on it, correct?
Right.
Because there was no source material for it, wasn't there?
Yeah. We talked a little bit about it, particularly I think it came up during the St. Pat's one.
Yeah, okay.
That's all right. We can roll that into Holy Days of Obligation.
There you go.
And then 4th of July, I believe, was the next one. Or we didn't do Memorial Day, right?
No.
4th of July was the next one. And Halloween was the most recent, and now Thanksgiving.
Yep, doing the full tour.
Yes, that is right. A tour de force and a tour de France. So here we go. Matt Borders, our favorite historian to have on to talk about holidays, even though you're not a holiday historian.
I am not.
But you are just so good at researching, and I am so lazy. I said, why don't we have you do this? Because we'd never do it if it wasn't for you. So thank you very much. Round of applause for that.
Well, thank you guys. I
Read
appreciate
Matt's next book.
Yeah.
Holy Days of Obligation in the Civil War.
And the holidays of the Civil War.
Faces of priests in the Civil War.
Faces of priests.
So how do you manage to write a book, do your job,
right,
and research for this show and your own show, the History Things podcast with Pat McGuire?
I put off the research for this until the very last minute. No, I'm joking.
No,
There you go. That's the spirit.
Yeah. That's how I used to get A's on my papers in college. So.
No, it's all about parsing it out, to be perfectly honest. The book deadlines and things tend to have longer...
You got more time to work
exactly.
on.
I've got a longer time frame to work on it, stuff like that. So, and this doesn't take a huge amount of time. It's just diving into the resource material.
Gotcha.
As we discussed, I think, during the first one, the Christmas episode, when you're looking at these diaries and journals and things, sometimes for the more modern publications, it's as easy as going back to the index. Do they reference Thanksgiving? No, they don't. All right, let's check the dates. Nope, they're not talking about it, so move on. Next one. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about Thanksgiving. Give us just a general history, like a timeline. Do you happen to have a timeline with you?
I do. I actually do have a Thanksgiving timeline.
It's almost like we talked about this.
Yeah, and pulling out some of the big dates in Thanksgiving history since the beginning. And most of us think of Thanksgiving and its beginning as 1621.
Right. This is fascinating to me here.
Yeah.
And I think the people will like this.
So there's actually one that's even older than that. National Park Service has been touching on this quite a bit. That's actually where I pulled it from. But Francisco Vasquez de Coronado actually has some form of feast or a Thanksgiving of sorts with the Teja Indians in Palo Duro Canyon, which is now Texas, or in Texas, in 1541.
1541. So 1541 is
80 years before the
first
traditional Thanksgiving as we know it. Yep.
So it's the first Thanksgiving in Texas.
Right.
Well, there you go, Texas.
Good on you. But I think this is great because we've looked at the folks coming over to the Plymouth colony or Massachusetts Bay colony, things like that, and the interactions between the Pilgrims and the Wapana Indians. But this just expands the story.
Yeah.
Gets more people into it. These ties to the Spanish crown and, of course, American Indians that were in the Southwest at the time and their interactions with these folks that are just starting to come into the, quote, New World and really explore. And Coronado, of course, there's lots of issues with Coronado.
Sure.
And that's a whole show in and of itself that would be completely uncivil war related.
Right.
But it's
not the least of which is the length of his name.
Oh, that's true.
It's too many syllables for me.
You tend to see that with these aristocrats and things.
Yes.
But it's still fascinating that we have these basically early forms of Thanksgiving, and we can expand the story to other groups and bring everybody in, because that's what we think of when we think of Thanksgiving.
Right.
We're bringing everybody to the table.
Yes.
Okay? And this just helps do that. Now, of course, 1621 is the one that is most famous here in the States, particularly on this side of the country, the East Coast, or closer to the East Coast. This is the Pilgrims and the Plymouth colony there in what becomes Massachusetts. And what has happened is that the Pilgrims land in 1620 at Plymouth Rock. They go through a very, very difficult winter and darn near die. Okay, the Wampanoag Indians, or American Indians, excuse me, succeed in teaching these folks how to survive in the New World, how to deal with different climates, different ways of growing things, and they're able to survive because of these interactions. And so in 1621, at the end of the harvest season, they have a feast in what is basically seen as the first Thanksgiving. And of course, there's been many, many paintings over the years done of this, showing the Wampanoag there, showing the men and the women in that classic pilgrim garb and all that good stuff, and the variety of different, what we now think of as pretty traditional Thanksgiving foods, be it the turkeys or the goose, corn and potatoes, and at least early forms of potatoes, probably especially sweet potatoes at that point. But yeah, so a lot of our traditions go back to that one, but again, we can go even further back if we wanted to.
Okay.
Now, moving forward, though, into the colonial period and beyond, 1777, all 13 colonies hold Thanksgiving celebrations. Now, something that I want you to keep in mind, Matt, when we're going through these, is that these are Thanksgiving celebrations, and there's no set date yet. Okay, and sometimes we'll even have multiple Thanksgivings in a year because the head of a colony or later the states would declare, hey, we've just gone through this rough event, or this great thing just happened, so let's have a day of feast or prayer or Thanksgiving.
So it wouldn't be like in Massachusetts, every April 3rd is Massachusetts Thanksgiving Day. It could be the third one year because, back in March, they survived some calamity or whatever.
Exactly.
And then the governor declared, on the 3rd, we're going to have a Thanksgiving, a feast of Thanksgiving.
Right.
Right. Okay. So it wasn't considered like an annual state holiday or colonial holiday.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
And we will get into that during the Civil War.
Uh-huh.
So we're going to touch on that here in a moment. One that your guests are your listeners are probably quite familiar with is, of course, 1789. President George Washington declares November 26th a National Day of Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. This is what's going to start this trend towards Thanksgiving celebrations being in the late fall. Okay. Particularly late November.
So George sets the stage.
Yes, he sets the stage in a lot of ways. 1815. President James Madison declares a National Day of Prayer and Thanksgiving right there at the end of the War of 1812. 1827, Sarah Josepha Hale writes essays in the Boston Ladies Magazine calling for an annual national celebration of Thanksgiving. Now, she's the editor of that magazine. She is a very important lady to this whole development of the national holiday, and she's a pretty powerful lady, too, because almost 20 years later, she's still at it. 1846, she is now the editor of Godey's Lady Book, which is the ladies' book is probably the best-known women's magazine in the country at the time.
Okay, like Red Book or something?
Something like that, yep.
Okay.
And she's calling for annual national celebrations of Thanksgiving. And so this is getting not only through New England and whatnot, but this is starting to get national attention.
Right.
Okay. This is going down to the southern states, going out to the western states, things of that nature. Now, let's do a dive into the Civil War dates themselves.
All right.
Okay?
Yeah.
1861. Confederate President Jefferson Davis calls for a national day of fasting and humiliation on November 15th. Okay?
So JD trumps AL.
Exactly.
Wow.
But he's not calling for a day of Thanksgiving.
That's true.
His remarks specifically say a national day of fasting and humiliation.
So don't eat and then embarrass people.
Well, be humble before God is more likely.
Right. My bad.
Now, also in 1861, President Abraham Lincoln orders government offices closed for a local day of Thanksgiving, giving thanks for the loyal men then fighting for the country.
Okay.
Okay, and that's also not only in 61, but I believe that was later in the year, too. Now, 1862, President Lincoln calls for a day of Thanksgiving for victory in battle. So we're giving a reason, and he actually puts this forth in April of 1862.
Okay.
Okay, so we've had some victories there in the winter of the early winter of 1862 and starting into the spring of 62, and Lincoln wants to basically get the word out, and hey, we're going to have a little celebration and thanks for these events.
Right.
Also in 1862, Jefferson Davis calls for a day of humiliation and prayer for victory in battle on September 18th for victories in front of Richmond and Manassas. So the fighting that had occurred at the 7 days and particularly Second Bull Run, the Confederacy is very pleased with how those went, obviously.
Right.
And so he's calling for a national day of prayer for
his
victory.
date was September 18th?
Correct.
Oh.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Right. So word has probably not reached Richmond yet about what's gone down in Sharpsburg.
You jumped the gun there, Jeff.
Well, that does happen. Now, 1863, President Lincoln calls for a day of national thanksgiving, praise, and prayer on August 6th for recent Union victories. And Matt, I actually printed out a copy of that, and I thought you might like to read at least part of that.
Thank you, Matthew. Let's see if I can read it in the dim light here. Now, therefore, be it known that I do set apart Thursday, the 6th day of August next, to be observed as a day for national thanksgiving, praise, and prayer, and I invite the people of the United States to assemble on that occasion in their customary places of worship and in the forms approved by their own consciences, render the homage due to the divine majesty for the wonderful things he has done in the nation's behalf, and invoke the influence of his Holy Spirit to subdue his anger subdue the anger which has produced and so long sustained a needless and cruel rebellion, to change the hearts of the insurgents, to guide the counsels of the government with wisdom adequate to so great a national emergency, and to visit the tender care and consolation throughout the length and breadth of our land all those who, through the vicissitudes of marches, voyages, battles, and sieges. It's funny, I get vicissitudes, but I stumble on sieges.
No, that was good.
Have been brought to suffer in mind, body, or estate, and finally to lead the whole nation through the paths of repentance and submission to the divine will, back to the enjoyment of union and fraternal peace. Done in the city of Washington this 15th day of July in the year of our Lord 1863, and of the independence of the United States. It's cut off at the bottom.
Yeah, it's
there.
cut off at the bottom.
I should have just stopped while I was ahead.
Well, I didn't highlight that section. I believe that is 88th year of our independence.
Ah, of course.
Or 87th, 4-7.
Yeah, okay. You were close.
Yeah.
What's 1 year? So that is it is interesting to read that. That is coming from the president.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because people, presidents to this day, they have the prayer breakfast or whatever, right, and they say some holy sounding things and everything like that. But I might be wrong because I don't pay much attention anymore. But do presidents say things that pious?
It depends on the president.
For Thanksgiving. I mean, I know for Christmas they might, and but it's just very odd to hear. That sounds to me more like something that you would hear a minister or a priest say from the pulpit.
Sure.
Than the president of the United States, according to the way we are today.
And I think for today's language, that's probably true. But if we look at presidential proclamations, even today, they still say things like this in the year of our Lord, 2020, 2021, so forth and so on. So we're still using some of that language that we see here. What I found particularly interesting about this particular proclamation is the date that they're looking at. This was done 15th day of July, 1863. So Gettysburg has happened. Vicksburg has fallen. Port Hudson has fallen. And so now the Mississippi flows unvexed to the sea, and the Tullahoma campaign is completed as well. We've had these hammer blows against the Confederacy, and Lincoln knows it, and so he wants to make it very clear to the country that, look, this is something to commemorate and celebrate. Okay, and so that's what he's doing there. But he's also hitting on many of the themes that we will see with the Gettysburg Address coming later that fall on November 19th, and also with the second inaugural. Okay, finishing out the war, but also looking to not only the man who has borne the battle, but his loved ones, the orphan, the widow, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
These themes are reflected here, possibly for one of the first times, and we will see that just increasing with these later documents that he's even more famous for.
Sure, yeah. It is interesting to hear him talk about, what's the term he uses, the enjoyment of union and brotherhood or something like that?
Let me see here. Visit tender care.
It's somewhere in there, but whatever. If you find it, let me know. But what I'm saying is that it's interesting to hear that.
Back to the enjoyment of union and fraternal peace.
Fraternal peace. Yep. There you go. It's just interesting to hear the leader of a country at war talk about reunion and peace and enjoying it with former enemies in that country. It's very Christ-like almost. Love your enemies, that type of whole thing. So it's interesting to hear.
Well, and that's the sort of language too that folks of this period, mid-19th century, would really recognize too.
Sure.
So it strikes me as appropriate, particularly for the day. We might arch an eyebrow at that today if we heard the current president or any of the presidents recently say that. But I think it's very common for that era.
Sure.
Now, you'll notice that he's calling for this day of Thanksgiving, though, on August 6th. So we actually have two Union Thanksgiving holidays in 1863. The more famous of the two is, of course, President Lincoln's proclamation calling for the last Thursday of November to be set aside as a day of thanksgiving and praise. Okay, so this is going to start the tradition of the fourth Thursday in November.
So, okay. So two in 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why wasn't the first one good enough for him?
Well, again, I think it's because he wanted to acknowledge the series of victories that Union arms had at that point.
Okay.
And then when it came around to the second one, that's establishing a national holiday. Okay. He'd had, of course, Mrs. Hale. Badgering's probably too strong of a word, but she's really been working this letter writing campaign for decades at this point. And she'd really been pushing the Lincoln administration, particularly when the war broke out, about having some sort of national holiday for the North to enjoy beyond the 4th of July or something like that.
Okay.
So there has been this pressure campaign building against the Lincoln administration to establish Thanksgiving as we're doing this annually.
Got it.
Now, one of the things that folks like to point out about this, I just want to do a brief quote from the actual proclamation. And this comes out of the 4th paragraph. It says, "I do therefore invite my fellow citizens in every part of the United States, and also those who are at sea and those who are sojourning in foreign lands, to set apart and observe the last Thursday of November next as a day of thanksgiving and prayer to our benefit,
Beneficent?
Beneficent, thank you, Father, who has dwelt in heaven."
This is like a tradition.
As I butcher a word or two?
You start a word, and I know when you pause, I'm like, I know he doesn't know the word, and then I somehow guess it.
Hey, that's okay, as long as it's working. What's kind of interesting about this is that these very poetic prose, while Lincoln absolutely backs them, he doesn't write this. Any idea who does?
Does it write that?
Mm-hmm.
Hay?
Close. Secretary of State William Seward.
Okay. I would have guessed it eventually if I just kept going down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Names.
No, but this is it. And when you look at Seward's writings, this is very much in his style. But it was interesting to notice that, and I just wanted to mention it because, again, it's a very evocative piece and moving, and it's establishing a national holiday, but Lincoln doesn't actually write it.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, in 1864, so a year later, Lincoln establishes the tradition of the last Thursday in November by doing it again. Okay, we declared it in 63, now we're actually doing it a year later.
Mm-hmm.
And so Thanksgiving occurs in the Union states at the very least on the last Thursday in November.
Now, let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. So when the president declares these things,
mm-hmm.
Does the country respond overwhelmingly in the affirmative and do it, or is it just kind of like how, like Biden says, wear your masks and nobody does?
It really depends on the situation. In this, I think it was received fairly well. Now, we're going to see some quotes when we get into the guys in the field and stuff kind of grumbling about things, or I don't see what there is to be thankful for,
Sure.
that sort of stuff.
That's all perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
But the folks at home, they're looking for reasons to come together. They're looking for not necessarily reasons to remember their loved ones in the field, but hey, this is a great excuse to spend a day in prayer and fraternity with my family and neighbors and stuff like that.
Sure, okay. Day off.
Right, there you go. Now, in 1865, Jefferson Davis actually declares a national day of fasting, humiliation, and prayer with Thanksgiving on March 10th, 1865.
Mm-hmm. Cutting a little close there.
Richmond has less than a month to stand at this point, so it's right at the end. We do not see a lot of Thanksgiving proclamations coming out of the Confederacy over the 4 years of the war. We also don't see a lot of Thanksgiving celebration or discussion going on in the Confederate States over the course of the war either, and in fact, my quotes really reflect that. I could not find any from Confederate troops.
I think if he's going to do it at that point, he should have declared it a day of begging, pleading, and bargaining instead of Thanksgiving because, come on. He had to know that the end was nigh.
Yeah. there is that. But we're also talking about Jefferson Davis. He's a very proud man, and I don't think you're going to get too much begging out of him.
Yeah.
Even later in the war when he is captured, we don't.
Or when he's proudly wearing a dress.
Well, I love that story, but even I'm willing to admit he wasn't wearing a dress. He had a shawl thrown over him, but we can get into that.
Yeah, that's
later.
another story.
Yeah, but yes, the federal press takes that and runs with it.
Sure,
It's a great little propaganda thing. Now, unfortunately, by 1865, around Thanksgiving, Lincoln is no longer with us.
Right.
So President Andrew Johnson recommends that the people of the United States, quote, observe the first Thursday of December next as a day of national thanksgiving to the Creator of the universe for these great deliverances and blessings.
Huh.
I suspect it's because Lincoln has been assassinated and Johnson doesn't necessarily want to take Lincoln's holiday and utilize it.
Got it.
Yeah, that's just my suspicion.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, I just want to, now that we're moving beyond the American Civil War, I've got a couple other points that I thought your listeners might be interested in. So kind of moving into the rest of the 1860s, 1866, Johnson's Thanksgiving Proclamation moves the holiday back to the last Thursday in November. His 1867 proclamation continues the last Thursday tradition, and he also will utilize it as almost a State of the Union address. We really don't have a State of the Union address at this point in American politics, and we're going to start seeing the Thanksgiving Day proclamation being used almost in that sense.
Okay, well, that makes sense, I guess. Yeah.
It's got a lot of prose about, hey, the country's coming back together, we're bouncing back, it's all of us are here, that sort of thing. 68, President Johnson again uses the Thanksgiving Proclamation as a State of the Union, hinting at what became the 1868 General Amnesty or Christmas Amnesty, which I know you're familiar with. That's basically when he said, okay, all of you Confederates that have fled the country, come on back. You're not going to be persecuted. And it unfortunately for especially the Reconstruction era, it reopens many of those former Confederates to then re-enter politics.
Right.
Yep.
And that leads to a lot of fun for the country.
Now, by 1869, President Grant, Ulysses S. Grant, is now in office, and he will use the Thanksgiving Proclamation as a State of the Union as well. But interestingly, recommends the third Thursday in November. So many of us look at FDR as kind of playing with the date, but Grant actually recommended the third Thursday as well.
It's interesting how these presidents jump around with it.
It is. So let's jump into the 20th century.
Okay,
now.
let's do that.
Okay, and I've only got a couple for these.
That's fine, but let's complete it.
Right. 1920, the first Thanksgiving parade is held in Philadelphia. Okay. So we think of Macy's Day Parade and all these big parades.
Yeah.
New York, but
Philly.
Yep, Philly got the first one.
Philly did something right.
1922, the National Football League plays its first games on Thanksgiving Day.
Aha.
Yep. And
giving birth to the tradition of the Thanksgiving Day game.
Exactly. And we've got 3 of them now, something like that?
I lost count. I stopped caring.
1924, the first Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade is held in New York City, so just 4 years after Philly there. 1934, the National Football League holds its... that's interesting. It actually has 2 dates for its first game. So National Football League, I wonder if it's because we had multiple leagues in that era. But regardless, we've got potentially 2 different dates when they did their first game on Thanksgiving.
Got it.
1939, in a bid to help bolster retail sales with the longer holiday shopping season and to put an end to the Great Depression, Franklin Delano Roosevelt moves Thanksgiving to the third Thursday in November. And I think most of us have heard that story and whatnot.
Now, have you heard the Macy's connection to that?
Shoot, go for it.
All right. I think it is that Roosevelt was buddies with the head of Macy's. I don't know if it actually was Macy at that time or not.
Okay.
And Macy's like, hey, Teddy. Oh, not Teddy, Frank.
Teddy?
Frankie. Listen, Why don't you declare Thanksgiving the third Thursday and make it permanent? That way, we get an extra week of Christmas shopping.
Right.
Have you heard this?
I knew that was I didn't realize it was Macy.
Well,
it may have been.
I don't know who it was. Bamberger or Penny. I don't know who the hell it was. But it was one of the. I think it was Macy.
Okay.
I don't know if it was Macy himself or someone from Macy's.
Sure.
But
I can totally see that happening.
Yeah. And they did it. And so we have Thanksgiving when we have it so that you can spend more money at department stores.
Now, what's interesting is that in 1941, after altering the date of Thanksgiving, President Roosevelt reestablishes the fourth Thursday of November as Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
And then finally in 1947, and I'm sure there's other interesting Thanksgiving dates after this, but I thought this one was funny. 1947, President Harry Truman pardons a turkey that is marked for the Thanksgiving dinner at the White House. So it's the first pardoning of a turkey. Yeah.
So then but now it's still the last day of, or the last Thursday of, no, it isn't. What is it? I don't even know when it is.
Thought it was.
Is it?
Yeah, I thought it was the last Thursday.
It's the Thursday before deer season.
There you go. That was JFK. JFK made that.
Yeah, this year it's on the 25th, which is the last Thursday.
The last Thursday.
Yep.
Okay, so it's back to the last Thursday. So maybe my Macy's thing is bull. Maybe I got that confused with something.
It doesn't matter. The Christmas music is already up.
Oh, my God, I know. I know.
Well, Roosevelt definitely did shift it forward to try to put an end, to increase shopping and try to put an end to the Great Depression.
Well, that may be what it was, and maybe it's not as nefarious
me.
as I made it sound.
It wouldn't surprise me if it was suggested to him by one of the big retail stores.
No. Well, yeah.
And he doesn't keep it that long, which I found interesting. I didn't realize it had only
maybe Macy pissed him off.
He's like, look, we're in a war now. Let's not screw with tradition.
You. I don't care about shopping. Yeah, Eric, you're right. The music is on. Usually they wait until Thanksgiving.
Not this year.
Not this year. No, I've been hearing it, and it makes me sick. Yeah. When it's 75 degrees outside, I don't really want to hear sleigh bells ring. Are you listening?
Mariah Carey emerged from her burrow promptly on November 1st this year.
Well, that I don't mind.
At least they waited till after Halloween. That has always been my pet peeve.
It won't be next year.
No. Next year it'll be Labor Day.
Labor Day.
Oh, and the Clapper, you wanted to say something.
Next year your pumpkins are going to be red and green.
I just have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
In your humble academic opinion, Mr. Borders, should people who put up Christmas decorations before Thanksgiving get human rights?
Jeez. Look, I don't want to step on anybody's holiday traditions, but I know in my household growing up, it was definitely after Halloween, after Thanksgiving.
After Thanksgiving.
Yeah. But I have had friends and whatnot over the years who put up.
Oh.
Yeah,
and sometimes it's just, hey, it's what you need right now.
Ours was typically like the Friday after Thanksgiving or the Saturday because Dad was going to deer camp on Sunday and he was going to be gone Monday. But it needed to be up.
Sure. Well, there you go. There's a good reason for it. We had neighbors that put them up in literally November 1st.
Right.
And then they would stay up till February 28th.
Wow. See, I'm guilty of leaving my Christmas tree up until late January. Oh.
Well,
because I'm too lazy to take it down and drag it out of my house.
See, I thought you were going to go the Catholic route.
No. No. Well, no, I couldn't even get past, January 9th?
Mm.
Yeah, Little Christmas.
Yeah.
No, they weren't lazy because this became an annual thing. They did it every year where they would leave the trees.
I'll be honest with you. If I was decorating the outside of my house, I would definitely do that. I just wouldn't turn any of it on.
Well, that's different.
Because it is freezing cold in November.
Yes.
I don't want to be out there putting.
Somewhere my father's nodding sagely, having decorated done an awesome job on the outside of our house for so many years.
He's like Clark Griswold.
Maybe not quite to that extent, but darn close some years, especially when we were little.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, when you're little, it's different because the kids get into it. And I used to like that. My nephew and my niece, they like the decorating and, they get all excited about Santa coming.
Of course.
Or what's his name? Jack What the hell's his name?
Jack Frost?
No, Jack from Nightmare Before Christmas. Skellington.
Oh, Skellington.
Yeah.
Well, that was a stretch. I wasn't even thinking that route.
My nephew
Krampus or something.
He loved that movie.
What, Jack Skellington visits your sister's house?
No. He just loved that movie, The Nightmare Before Christmas. And I was surprised. I thought it would scare him, But he's 24. It shouldn't scare him at that age. And you don't have to keep moving the microphone. You could actually pull the chair up to the microphone or sit on the stool and kill yourself, and then just put the mic up at a comfortable level. And then when you want to speak, you speak. You understand that?
Just to clarify, we're not advocating for
you to speak.
Owen to kill himself so much as we're acknowledging the significant hazard that our
correct
our stools present.
Correct. We are not a modern high schooler that tells people to kill themselves. So, all right. So go ahead, Matt. Where are we now? We're now into the section of what other happenings in the Civil War.
I thought we would dive in because we've kind of covered this with the other holidays. Like, what else is going on?
Right. Yes.
Okay. Because there's
like
a war on.
Yes.
So I thought I would do a little bit with that. What other happenings are occurring? November 28th, 1861 was Thanksgiving Day, if we were to establish Thanksgiving by this point.
Right.
The Southern Congress officially admitted Missouri into the Confederacy.
Okay, welcome, Missouri.
Federal authorities around Port Royal Sound are ordered to confiscate crops and to use the local enslaved population to prepare for the defenses of Port Royal Sound as well.
This was who? The Confederate troops or the
that was Union troops.
That was Union troops.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. The Southern Congress and admitting Missouri part is interesting because Missouri is one of those deeply divided border states where half of the state, particularly the southern counties, basically go, hey, we want to cede from the Union, and the rest of the state goes, no.
So how did that work?
Basically, they have representation in the Confederate Congress, both Kentucky and Missouri. That's why some Confederate flags have 13 stars on them, even though 11 states only officially ceded from the Union.
Got it. Okay.
So that's a little fun fact about the stars.
That is a fun fact.
Now, in 1862, November 27th, President Lincoln meets with General Burnside at Ambrose Burnside at Aquia Creek, Virginia. Burnside is proposing a direct assault across the Rappahannock. President Lincoln proposed a more complicated three-prong attack that General Burnside would reject. And, of course, we know what occurs there.
Bummer.
So,
That's right.
Just a few weeks later at Fredericksburg. Yep. In addition, there was also skirmishing at Mill Creek, Tennessee, and in Carthage, Missouri. So now we're getting into the fighting. In 1863, we have the siege of Chattanooga, Tennessee, had been broken the previous day, and now the pursuit of Braxton Bragg and his forces was on. Severe fighting will erupt at Chickamauga Station. We'll also have fighting at Peavine Valley, Pigeon Hill, Ringgold Gap, which is a really interesting battlefield, and Graysville. So federal forces are now in pursuit of Bragg's troops. We're actually going to see some of the really competent officers in Bragg's command doing very well during this series of fighting withdrawals.
Finally.
All right.
Now, in Virginia, so back to the Eastern Theater, on the Rapidan in Virginia, the Mine Run campaign is going to kick off on November 26th of 63. Opens between George Meade and Robert E. Lee, a campaign of marching and maneuver with limited fighting, as you guys are well aware. And then finally, we do have skirmishing also occurring in Woodson, Missouri, Brentsville, Virginia, Plymouth, and Warm Springs, North Carolina. So we've got fighting across the board.
Got some fighting.
Yeah.
Nothing major, though.
I would say those fights following up the breaking of the siege of Chattanooga are pretty significant.
Okay.
Yeah. Pat Claiborne and his boys are fighting some pretty heavy withdrawing actions. Now, in 1864, November 24th, federal forces beat the Confederate Army of Tennessee to Columbia, Tennessee, and drive back Confederate cavalry under Nathan Bedford Forrest. Federal troops take up a strong position on the Duck River in preparation for the movement of John Bell Hood's Army of Tennessee as they're moving northward. Skirmishing also occurs at Campbellsville and Linville, Tennessee. Additional skirmishing occurred at St. Charles, Arkansas, and Prince George Courthouse, Virginia, and Sherman continued to advance through Georgia with Confederate forces unable to determine his intentions. The quotes coming out of this particular era are very interesting. You've got guys like Hardee saying, like, well, once we know where he's going and what he's going to do, we'll throw something in front of him. But until that point, I don't know. Now, it is also on November 24th, 1864, that Lincoln's Attorney General Edward Bates resigns, and he is going to be replaced on December 2nd, 1864, by James Speed, a lifelong friend of Abraham Lincoln's. So that's the news in the Civil War on Thanksgiving Day.
Thanksgiving. Okay. So what did people think of Thanksgiving in those days? The boys in the Army, how did they celebrate it? Did they celebrate it? And then what were their thoughts on it?
Food. That's the big thing.
Thinking about food.
They're thinking about food. They're thinking about the friends and family at home. There's actually quite a bit in the newspapers about Thanksgiving, but it tends to be, like we've seen with some of the other holiday episodes, a lot of looking at the, quote, history of it. So a lot of that hearkening back to Plymouth Rock and all that good stuff.
Okay.
We also have a lot of derision being thrown at the holiday coming out of Southern papers.
Well, what are they? Yeah, okay. Why? What are they saying?
They're taking shots. For instance, we talked about
They're mad because they don't have food to eat?
It's more of the take the 1861 and 2 proclamations by Lincoln, where it's like, hey, for victory in battle. They're like, oh yeah, what's happened since then, bud? Stuff like that.
Okay.
So it's a lot of that sort of thing.
So in other words, there's derision towards the Union or the United States
Correct.
Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Not their own. Do they have their own? I mean, they do.
Again, we've got the proclamations, but we really don't have this hard and fast holiday being set up. Okay.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, and it's also really interesting that all of the Confederate proclamations for Thanksgiving or like-minded events are, unfortunately, days of fasting.
Right, not feasts.
Right. And so that
Maybe it's because he realized they have no choice, so let's just declare it a day of fasting, and then it will be like no other day for them. Or
you could read it that way. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now,
it'll be like any other day is what I meant to say. But go ahead.
Now, as we've done in the past, I have broken out a number of quotes from the troops in the field. I've tried to do a kind of a spread of different units and a few different theaters of the war for each year of the war as well. And some of these are longer quotes and some of them are shorter, but I figure we can go through some of those if you so wish.
Sure.
So, and you're going to notice, too, that the dates are going to be jumping around again because sometimes they're able to celebrate them on the day of. Some of the early war ones, of course, we don't have a set date yet, that sort of thing.
So when you do it, just remind us of what the declared date was that year.
Right.
Okay.
Thanks. So this comes from 1861.
Okay.
There is no declared date yet for an official holiday. We are going to have, of course, some of those proclamations, but this is occurring in November of 1864, so kind of hearkening back to Washington's Thanksgiving. This is from First Sergeant Wyman S. White of the 2nd United States Sharpshooters on November 24th, 1861 in Concord, New Hampshire. So they're forming at this point. It was Thanksgiving Day in New Hampshire, and the recruits took dinner in the Phoenix Hotel, and in the afternoon took the physical examination and were mustered into the United States service for 3 years or during the war. And this comes from the Civil War Diary of Wyman S. White.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they're not even to the front yet. Okay, they're still mustering in. Now, just a couple days later, First Lieutenant Abraham Cumbecker of the 32nd Ohio Infantry wrote on November 27th and 28th, 1861, from the summit of Cheat Mountain, Virginia. So the 32nd Ohio, they're in it. They've been fighting in what's now West Virginia, or Western Virginia at the time. And this is a longer quote, so please do bear with. I almost forgot to tell you that we've had a pleasant time here on the 27th and 28th of last month. Colonel Ford prepared a dinner for Thanksgiving, which was the 28th ultimate. The colonel had to leave on the 27th. Consequently, we had the dinner on the 27th. He had an excellent dinner for this region of the country. I will tell you the leading dishes. We had roasted chicken, chicken pot pie, light bread, potatoes, butter, stewed peaches, canned peaches, and a variety of other articles too numerous to mention. After dinner, we had the wine served, which was of pure catawba, sent to the colonel from Mansfield, Ohio. The guests are too numerous to mention. On Thursday, the 28th, General Robert Milroy had a Thanksgiving dinner. The invited guests from our regiment were Major Hewitt, our chaplain, Mr. William Nickerson, and myself, as the old general is a personal friend of mine. We had an excellent dinner consisting of roasted venison and roasted geese and so forth. After dinner, we had some fine music. We had a gay time considering the fact that most important part of the party, to make it interesting, the want of ladies.
Yeah, that's tough.
But we expect when the war is over, we will have parties that will be attended by the ladies. And what's interesting is that he's writing this to the gal he winds up marrying.
Yeah. What was it with men back then writing stuff like that? Because Custer did that too. He would tell his wife about the ladies in New York or wherever he was. Right. I think it was almost a way to remind her that as beautiful as they are, I'm still only thinking of you and I'm faithful to you. It was like a weird way of saying I'm being faithful to you. Mm-hmm. Look at all this temptation around me.
Right.
But okay, so
no, that's a good point. And we do look at some of these guys. I mean, Stuart, he well known for loving female attention, but as far as we know, there was never any
dalliances.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. He just enjoyed the company.
Well, sure, who doesn't?
Right. If we move into 1862, I have a quote here from Sergeant George M. Inglis of the 89th New York Infantry. Oh, and excuse me, that lengthy quote that I had comes from actually a website that transcribes letters. It's a very interesting website.
What's the name?
Called Spared and Shared.
Sparedandshared.com?
Yep. I believe it is a .com, if I remember right.
Very good.
Yep. So, yeah, I highly recommend folks check that out. November 27th, 1862, in front of Fredericksburg, Virginia. Let's see. We have been at work carrying boards and commencing a house. It is Thanksgiving. How I would have liked to have been home. And this is from the book This from George, which is a collection of his letters. So really not getting into partying, not getting into feasting. He's just thinking about home. Mm-hmm. And in this case, they're prepping for winter quarters. But of course, we know they've got one more nasty fight to deal with before that happens.
Right.
Yeah. Another gentleman who's in the field that winter is Second Lieutenant Elijah Hunt Rhodes, 2nd Rhode Island Infantry.
I've heard of him.
Oh, yes. We've mentioned him a few times.
Yeah.
Writes a lot.
Do it in that New England accent that they do in Ken Burns.
Oh, no.
Come on, do it.
I'm not... God, what would a Rhode Island accent be?
I don't know, but the guy... do the accent the guy does in the
like
Ken
Peter
Burns.
Griffin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here, let me try it.
Go for it.
Where is it?
Right there.
Okay. All right, so Second Lieutenant Elijah Hunt Rhodes. All right, well, let's see. The guy in Ken Burns says something like, Thanksgiving Day in Rhode Island.
There you go.
Well, I too have... No, see, but that's not the way. Now I'm doing Peter Griffin.
You're doing Peter Griffin is like a 1930s radio person.
Yeah. Well, I have too much to be thankful... What? I have too much to thank my Heavenly Father for. He has preserved my life and given me health and strength to do my duty. For all which I have devoutly, for all which I am devoutly grateful. All for the Union. All right, Thanksgiving Day in Rhode Island. Well, I too have much to be thankful. See, did you copy this over, or was this like?
Oh, that's a direct.
Okay, it's copy and pasted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so they didn't do a good job. I too have much to be. Thank my Heavenly Father for.
They missed a 2 in there.
I think so. Or thankful or whatever. But anyway, thankful to my Heavenly Father for. He has preserved my life and given me health and strength to do my duty, for all which I am devoutly grateful. And that's from All for the Union there. Sorry.
Nope, that's
Didn't
fine.
mean to mangle that.
That's a great resource, though. All for the Union, I highly recommend.
Elijah Hunt Rhodes.
Elijah. 2nd Rhode Island Infantry.
You are dark. All right, go ahead.
Okay.
You okay?
Live on air, Matt has a stroke.
Now, this next one actually comes from the 9th Vermont Infantry, and we see them quite a bit in the Maryland campaign, particularly the fighting down there near the fighting around, not near, around Harper's Ferry. But this is Captain Edward Hastings Ripley, 9th Vermont Infantry. December 10th, 1862, in Camp Douglas, Chicago, Illinois. Why are we there?
Were they captured?
They were. Yep, they're part of the garrison. And I actually quote him in my book, too. We are in the midst of festivities following the receipt of our big box. And again, we talked about boxes.
Oh, yeah. Packages from home and stuff. Yep.
We have been eating, drinking, and very merry since we unpacked it. And this is from Vermont General, the unusual experiences of Edward Hastings Ripley in the American Civil War.
So he's getting food from home.
He's getting food from home. He's there with his men in Chicago. They're not in a dangerous situation, even though they can't go anywhere because the garrison of Harper's Ferry is captured and paroled, which means they have to sit out the war until they are notified that they have been properly exchanged for a Confederate prisoner.
That never, no matter how many times people explain it to me, will ever make sense to me that people did that.
Now, Pat can't wrap his head around it either.
I guess that means me and Pat have no honor because
I wouldn't go that far for either of you.
Well, I mean, if I'm in a war, I'm going to sit it out and wait until I'm exchanged. It's ridiculous. And then on top of that, I'm in my own country's prison camp.
Right, and you're being guarded.
And I'm being guarded.
Yep. Now, what's interesting with the 9th and some of the other...
how do you just move on from that, Matthew? Doesn't that sound ridiculous to you?
To be perfectly honest, no.
Because of the sensibilities of the time and you understand them.
Yeah. And we see this a lot, not only during the American Civil War, but we see this in wars coming up to this. So,
don't get me started on the ridiculousness of the Revolutionary War and all that stuff and all that crap. Yeah.
Yeah. So parole, yes, by our modern sensibilities, paroling enemy forces doesn't make any sense because they'd go right back into the opposing force.
Yeah.
Now, the Lincoln administration in late 63 and into 64 agrees with that mindset. They're like, look, every time we capture these guys, they wind up back in the army again, so we're going to begin to hold them. And that's when the exchange system, the unofficial exchange system between the armies, between the opposing sides, breaks down.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, Grant, when he becomes general-in-chief, and I apologize, I'm going far afield now. But when Grant becomes general-in-chief of the armies in the winter of 64, he would agree with the Lincoln administration's decision to stop the exchange system. Also because the Confederacy is not exchanging United States colored troops.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And that's a big one. Lincoln is not happy about that, and Grant agrees.
Because their attitude is that those are United States soldiers.
Right.
Not black soldiers. They're United States soldiers.
Exactly.
You give them back.
We're going to
treat them like you would a white soldier.
Right. We're going to exchange, and we want them back. That sort of thing. They're not going back into slavery. They're not being killed for servile insurrection. They're United States soldiers, and we wish to exchange them for your POWs.
Right.
Now, as you guys know, the exchange system is reestablished later in the war, late 64, but it's really never to the same extent that it was. And we will have tragedies such as Elmira, Andersonville, Camp Asylum, things like that happening because there is now such a buildup of course, all the prisons that are right there around Richmond as well. And we will have those tragedies of men wasting away in these facilities because they were never meant to hold that many people for that long.
Yeah.
And of course, the Confederacy is struggling to feed its own forces, let alone feed thousands of POWs.
Right, right.
Now, this last one for 1862 I thought was pretty interesting because now we're starting to get into the food again.
That's what I like.
This comes from Colonel Charles S. Wainwright, Chief of Artillery, 1st Corps, Army of the Potomac, November 27th, 1862. He's down in Brooks Station, Virginia. This Thanksgiving Day, in all the loyal states. Here in excuse me, this is Thanksgiving Day in all the loyal states. Here in camp, it cannot be more observed, especially as we are having a heavy rain. We determined, though, a week ago to have a good dinner, if such could be got, and gave Major Sanderson carte blanche for our headquarters, so he can do whatever he needs to do to make this dinner happen. The Major came fully up to his reputation as a caterer, and set out a really excellent dinner when one considers our situation and destitution of proper cooking arrangements. And then he lists the bill of fare.
Oh, yes.
Okay. And I thought, I don't have a real good background in cooking and the names of cooking. I thought you might enjoy reading this one.
Okay.
Okay. So just start there at bill of
Why?
fare.
Are there a bunch of French words?
There are
Is that why?
several,
Of course.
and I would butcher them.
Okay. Fresh oysters not on the shell. Green turtle soup.
A la tin
A
can.
la tin. Oh, a la tin can. Okay. Leg of mutton cut in capers. Roast turkey a la hardtack and cranberry sauce. They're inventive. Sweet potatoes au cendre. I don't know if that's how you pronounce that.
I don't know either.
Haricots?
Haricot.
Haricot? Haricots?
I'm not familiar with it. That's why I passed it off.
Haricot. Oh, you
Haricot
bastard. Oh, look at this. Look at this. All right, I'm going to try my best here. I don't know French from my hole in the ground. All right. Haricot farci au vent. Riz. It's probably
Rice.
Rice? Just rice? Oh, you speak
that's what
French,
it
don't
is.
you?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so let's see how I do, and then you read
I was
it.
going to
Okay?
say, hell,
Why do
if
we
he-
have the
I
New
didn't know
Jersey jackass trying to read French and he speaks it?
I didn't know Owen spoke it. Give it to
Yeah,
him.
wait, hold on. I want to see how bad I do. All right, so haricot, farci, au vent, rice. They're just boring. A la Dixie, pomme de terre, a la smash, or smash, and then canvasback ducks, offre d'enfant,
God damn.
and currant jelly, or is it currant?
It's current.
Currant, thank you. Lobster salad, there that is again. Lobster salad, it keeps coming up. Rather doubtful. Lobster salad, rather doubtful. Mince pies, a la sauce de pommes.
Applesauce.
Pumpkin pies, New England rum. Almonds, no raisins, apples. Ginger, hot in the mouth. Yes, it is. Fruitcake, coffee, and whiskey from A Diary of Battle. Now, Owen, read it in French.
Holy hell. Okay. Haricot farci
Into
au
the
vent.
microphone.
Okay. Haricot farci au vent, riz à la Dixie. That's like beans.
Just read it. Don't translate it.
Pomme de terre à la smash. Feu d'enfer.
I was close.
À l'essence de pomme. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Sorry to put you on the spot there, Matt. No, and I didn't know you spoke
No,
French. or else
I don't
would've had
mind
you
having
done it.
fun with it. Yeah.
And I'm the one who cooks.
Exactly.
It's funny when you have people who don't know it.
Well, what did those mean?
Well, haricot is beans.
No, of
It's
course.
just green beans.
Yeah, green
Okay.
beans. Riz, it's rice. And
Rice.
That was like meat pies with applesauce
Okay.
and potatoes.
What does faris al vents mean? Is that a way of preparing it?
Yeah, that is. I don't.
Oh,
It's
hang on.
farci au vent.
Let's take a gander at that right quick. Where are we looking? Where are we looking?
Look under
here we
bill
go.
of fare.
It's something of the vents.
Fossile vent. It is. It's like stuffing.
Oh,
right?
really?
So, like in English, it would
Butthole.
just be farce, right? Which kind of developed into like a force meat pie, which is an English thing. We don't have it here, but you're essentially stuffing it.
Oh,
Au
There
vent
you
means
go.
in the vent. Or
See,
of the
yeah.
vent.
Of the vent. So you're stuffing it up the
Of the vent.
I learned
turkey's vent.
something.
Stuffing it up your vent.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm going to get in on the clapping. Well, that was good, gentlemen. A nice group effort. Thank you for
Took
that.
4 weirdos in a shed to translate what all that shit means.
Hey, that's all right.
Je me speaky Frenchy.
Thank God Owen was here for the pronunciation.
There you go. Well, and as Matt said, that comes from A Diary of Battle, Colonel Charles Wainwright's efforts during the war, which is another great read. He's got a lot of opinions about a lot of people. Moving into 1863, Brigadier General Elfius Williams, one of my favorite guys to read about. 1st Division, 12th Corps, Army of the Cumberland by this point. This is actually to one of his daughters on December 8th, 1863 in Tullahoma, Tennessee. So my day was used up and I did nothing, except in the quiet of the evening, sat before my fire and thought of absent friends. He's referring to what he did on Thanksgiving. Of course, the good things and the good company at Uncle's had a prominent place in my reveries. Our anticipated feast of good things was delayed, almost lost by a very mysterious disappearance of our cook. It was nearly 8 p.m. before we got anything to eat. And he goes on to talk about how his cook got on a train and was gone for a week.
Nice.
Yeah. Let's see. This comes from the Cannon's Mouth, which is a collection of letters to his daughters. Again, Brigadier General Elfius Williams. Now, that's the top or near the top of the pecking order. Let's drop it back down to the men in the ranks. This actually comes from Private John Haley, 17th Maine Infantry, on November 24th, 1862. Or excuse me, 1863. I actually miswrote that. In Falmouth, Virginia. While our friends at home suffer through roast turkey, mince pies, and plum pudding, we cram ourselves on air pudding. At night, we drew some fresh beef, which was put through the smoking process and devoured. This didn't satisfy our appetites and only set them clamoring for more. This comes from the Rebel Yell and Yankee Hurrah, and he goes on to actually talk about how guys were stripping sinews and things like this from the beef that had been cut up just to try to get anything else, any more sustenance, and how it was really unappetizing.
Yeah. Sounds horrifying.
Yeah. Now, Captain Alfred P. Rockwell of the 1st Connecticut Light Artillery wrote on November 25th, 1863, from Folly Island, South Carolina. Tomorrow, as you can see by the enclosed order, is Thanksgiving Day. So he's referencing Lincoln's proclamation there. Here as well as home. But alas, we have no turkey. I certainly have cause to be thankful. Need I say why most of all? And he's doing a little wink and a nod to his girl at home that he's writing to. The soldiers will have a holiday, but there is little amusement to be had here. And this again comes from that website, Spared and Shared, which is a really interesting collection. Now, we're going to touch on the United States Sharpshooters again.
Okay.
First Sergeant Wyman S. White, 2nd U.S. Sharpshooters, in November of 1864 before Petersburg, and he did not specify what day this was. It's close to Thanksgiving, though, because it says, I received a box from home about a week before Thanksgiving with some good things to eat and a big hat and a pair of calfskin boots that were made to measure by a shoemaker in my hometown. Also some mittens and stockings that my mother knit for me. And this, of course, comes from Civil War Diary of Wyman S. White. So
food and gifts and other things to help
definitely
keep them comfortable.
Season.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the holiday season. And
I wonder if it's because, the winter's coming on and it makes you want to retreat into your home, into the warmth of your home.
Oh, I think so.
You want to cuddle up with someone by a fire and just be around people you love until you can't stand them in March and you can't wait for the spring to come so that you could all be out of the house and not see each other. And I wonder if that's why we tend to be giving in this time of the year, and we are more thankful and everything because we're about to go into hibernation, so to speak. And it's just we're not going to do anything for the next 6 months. So
batten down the hatches. Hope you're comfy.
Let's look back on this past year and try to be thankful for it and hope that next year is going to be good.
Even better. Yeah, exactly. Now, this was interesting because we're starting to see how the war is really grinding on the guys.
All right.
Again, Corporal John Haley, 17th Maine, November 24th, 1864, Petersburg, Virginia. This day has been set apart by the President as a day of, quote, thanksgiving and praise. If anybody can tell me any occasion for gratitude or praise, I shall greatly be indebted to them. Since the reoccurrence of this festive occasion 1 year ago, many changes have taken place. Many familiar faces have passed away. Many voices have been hushed, their lives sacrificed. As for me, I momentarily expect death or some calamity in which this horrid war abounds. I am thankful that the days of slavery are ended. I hope the next Thanksgiving will find me safely at home. And again,
God, how did you get a hold of my war journals?
I was gonna say, man, imagine like living like that every day with that way of thinking. But then here's Eric, and he did live that way, right, Eric? You still do. You always say.
Yeah, absolutely. I wait for death momentarily.
So depressing.
and again, this comes from the Rebel
I do
Yell
what I
and
can.
Yankee Hurrah. No, but I think that's a very... these are guys who've gone through it. They're very used to, as much as it's terrible and they recognize it as terrible, they are used to the calamities and the sporadic nature of war. This
Yeah.
could happen at any moment.
Yeah, you could be out anytime.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially there in front of Petersburg when it's a sharpshooter,
Right.
A random cannon shot. Any number of things could have taken him out at that point. So, no, I get that grimness.
Oh, sure.
I appreciate, though, that he is still looking to the future to some extent.
Sure.
And he recognizes really some of the driving forces, or the driving force behind the war, slavery.
Yeah.
And the ending of slavery. He's thankful for that. So
Yep.
that's great. This actually is from a slightly different front. We've had a couple there from Petersburg, so let's look at the Richmond front. This comes from Colonel Alfred P. Rockwell, 6th Connecticut Infantry, November 27th, 1864. Before Richmond, Virginia. Thanksgiving Day, I dined with my cavalry friends, and he's referring to the 4th Massachusetts, and had turkey, etc., etc. Colonel Rand came up from Deep Bottom, and we had a pleasant time. So the fighting around 1st, 2nd Deep Bottom, all that good stuff. He goes home for 30 days. I told him I did not particularly envy him unless he were to remain. Okay, so, and Eric, we've touched on this in the past with some of the other holiday episodes. These guys even shunning the idea of going home because they know they're going to have to come back again. That's what he's talking about right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sucks.
I could imagine that does suck. You miss home, you get to go home, and you don't want to go back to that hell.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So it's better to just stay in the hell. I get it.
I used to try to put it off for as long as possible.
Yeah.
I remember you mentioning that.
My second deployment, I waited 11 months before I went on R&R.
And then,
Wow.
and then
By design.
how long were you home for?
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
11 months and you get 3 weeks. And then how hard was it to go back?
Oh my God, it was hell.
Yeah.
Those
I bet
last
it
4
was.
months took forever.
I bet.
That's kind of why when I lived in Jersey, I rarely visited here because I love it here, and New Jersey is hell. That was my war. Thank you. And so I would not come here because leaving was hard. Leaving was hard to go back to New Jersey, back to my home, my war front, my front lines, and. I'm not trying to do any stolen valor here, but I can relate.
I'm so sorry you were born in New Jersey.
I am too.
Well, and I think it's even not looking at the extremes of fighting a war and getting to step away from it and then having to go back to said war. And,
Yes.
we hear similar announcements and statements by soldiers throughout American military history.
Right.
Okay. But think about it, just the situation you had. You love Gettysburg. You didn't like to leave Gettysburg. And I think even during the holiday season, many of us feel that way. Many of us, not everybody, feels that way about going home. Mm-hmm. Okay?
I don't, honestly, I don't
I know
like
you're
to
not
go
a
home.
huge fan of your home, but
I wish everybody would come here for the holidays.
that would be a cool holiday.
Yeah, it would be, but they don't want to do it. So I got to go to them.
So I got two left for you for 1864.
Okay, go ahead.
And this actually is now, he's gone up in rank. This is Brevet Brigadier General Charles S. Wainwright on November 24th, 1864. Again, the Petersburg Front. This is Thanksgiving Day, and he has that in quotes, all over the country. The president has appointed it as well as the government of the different states. Great preparations were made in New York City to supply all the soldiers with a turkey dinner, and the papers this week have been full of accounts of the cooking and packing. Unfortunately, it did not get down in time for the distribution this morning, though the cargoes arrived at City Point last night. Captain Steele tells me that the proportions to this corps will be 14,000 pounds of turkey, 100 barrels of apples with cranberry sauce and pies in like quantity. As the officers are to get some as well as the men, teamsters, hospitals, and all, the above amount will have to be divided among about 24,000, giving rather over half a pound of turkey, 1 apple, and a bite of pie to each. Bite of pie to each. When these things are done, it would be much better to confine it to 1 article and plenty of that. So he's saying, look, instead of spreading the love across everybody, let's concentrate on one thing, and you're going to get a lot of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what? Like, you mean everybody got all one thing, or it would be like this many men would all get turkey and this many men would all get pie?
That's what I interpreted as.
Did you ever come across Leander Stillwell talking about Thanksgiving?
Stillwell we've talked about before, but I wasn't able to find.
He's very bitter.
Yeah.
So
Can you find it?
Did you find
I have it right here.
Read
Go
it.
for
All right,
it.
read it to us.
And he's actually writing in a letter to his father about Christmas, but he references Thanksgiving in here.
Throws a little jab at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I think we may have touched on this.
Yeah.
When Christmas morning came, I was feeling awful blue. In spite of all I could do, I couldn't help but think about the good dinner you folks at home would have that day, and I pictured it all out in my imagination. Then about every one of the boys had something to say about what he would have for Christmas dinner if he was home, and they'd run over the list of good things till it was almost enough to make one go crazy. To make matters worse, just the day before in an old camp, I had found some tattered fragments of a New York Illustrated newspaper with a whole lot of pictures about Thanksgiving Day in the Army of the Potomac. Oh, yes. Yeah. They were shown as sitting around piles of roast turkeys, pumpkin pies, pound cake, and goodness knows what else, and I took it for granted that they would have the same kind of fodder today. You see, the men in that army, by means of their railroads, are only a few hours from home, and Old Forest is not in their neighborhood. So it is an easy thing for them to have good times. And here we were, away down in Tennessee, in the mud and the cold, no tents, on quarter rations, and picking scraps of hardtack out of the mud and eating them. It was enough to make a preacher swear.
Yeah, I remember we did touch on that.
Did we talk about that?
That was on the
in
Christmas one.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's a good one that you pulled up
It's
there.
a great one.
Because, I mean, that's...
Thanks, Eric.
Just think about that now. You know the other guys on your team are having the life of Riley, and you're in that miserable...
Good reference.
Thank you. You're in that miserable... it's better than me saying the life of Brian. Hell, in the mud, and you're picking out. You're on what is it? Quarter rations.
Quarter
they were on
rations.
Quarter rations. These boys up north, they're getting turkeys and canned food, and you got quarter
Boxes from
rations and
home.
no tents. Did you say no tents too, Eric?
It says no tents.
No tents
In the mud,
in
in
the
the
mud,
cold,
in
no
the
tents
cold.
on quarter rations, picking scraps of hardtack out of the mud.
It's a wonder
That's in
everybody.
Tennessee, right, Eric?
Yeah, he was in Tennessee. It's a wonder everybody didn't just say "F this" and go home all at once.
Well, a lot of them did, but
Yeah.
not all at once.
I would have.
The last one I have for you here comes from November 23rd, 1864 in Milledgeville, Georgia. So this is with
Georgia.
Sherman's boys.
All right, here we go.
Sergeant Rice C. Bull, 123rd
Rice
New York.
Bull. That's a
Rice
good
Bull,
name.
Yep. 123rd New York Infantry. We thought we had had much to be thankful for. The fact that we are here alive was ample cause, and we, and had we not just covered 100 miles of the enemy's country with not a gun being fired by our left wing, meaning his chunk of Sherman's march. Further, were we not in possession of the capital of Georgia? So they've got something to be thankful
Sure.
for. Now he's going to get into the food. Early in the morning, 10 of us bunched our food holdings for dinner. We had several hens, a goose, some fresh pork, a bag of wheat flour, and coffee. Now, prior to this quote, he had talked about how the bummers had just been coming in with all of these items that they'd taken from the countryside, and they're going to take this bundle of food that they have here and go pay a local African-American lady who they keep referring to as Auntie to cook it for them.
Okay.
And they talk about loving to just stand around near the cabin as the food's cooking and getting all the smells, and then paying her $2 to cook this basically all-day meal for them, and then they go off on it. They stuff themselves silly and then leave her the food that they couldn't eat. So it's
Oh, that was nice of them.
it is, and it's an interesting way to compare how the various armies and campaigns are going through this national holiday, especially as the war progresses.
There is nothing like smelling the house when dinner's being cooked.
I agree.
Right? That beautiful turkey smell.
Well, and supposedly smell is one of their strongest attachments to memory, too.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. I mean,
Onions.
yeah,
Caramelized
that's
onions,
another
yeah.
good one. Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh man, I just think my grandmother's stuffing she used to make. Thank God my mother learned the recipe before she died, before my grandmother died, because she used to put sausage in it, and she would do some as actual stuffing and then some as dressing. Of course, the stuffing was always better because it had like all the turkey juice in it, you
Right.
know. But then she would put strips of bacon over the top of the turkey. So then
That's interesting.
have you ever had that?
Not a big wrapping things in bacon fan.
Agree.
Also, not a turkey fan, if I'm honest.
I can make a damn
Disagree.
good turkey.
We are
And that's fair. Like I'll eat it, but I don't prefer the texture of turkey.
as opposed to what?
chicken.
It's the same thing to me.
No,
Oh, I wouldn't
turkey's
go that far.
turkey's
Really?
much
Yeah.
stringier. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
It can also be a lot drier,
Oh,
too.
definitely
Yeah,
drier. But that's, I
absolutely.
think, because people don't know how to cook it.
Right.
Yeah. No, but anyone who doesn't like turkey or bacon or turkey and bacon is a communist
And don't deserve
Wow.
human rights.
and
Well,
don't
then
deserve human
Call
rights.
me Karl
I've
Marx.
I've never heard of putting bacon on a turkey before.
Maybe
I
you're the
like
communist.
bacon.
I love bacon.
I just don't enjoy wrapping everything in bacon. It's
You don't have
not-
to wrap it. You could just take a bite of the other thing and then take a bite of the bacon. As long as they're in your mouth together dancing.
I like my bacon nice and crispy.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's how it gets when
I
you put it on
enjoy-
top of a turkey, by the
I
way.
enjoy my poultry skin to be nice and crispy,
Absolutely.
and the two they don't marry up to
There's
me.
not there's nothing better than crispy poultry skin. I don't care if it's chicken
Oh,
or turkey, duck.
Oh man,
Oh,
if it's
Duck
done
is foul,
right.
but still.
If it's done right.
yes.
Well, yeah, it is
Yes.
foul.
A bird. It's a bird.
bird, yeah.
Bird
Also
skin.
foul.
The avian creatures. There we go.
No, I agree. That is. I mean, I'm actually looking forward to Thanksgiving again
There
now
you go.
because of this.
Look at you go.
I never do these shows on an empty stomach.
Getting all
Also
excited.
true.
That's what I'm learning today because
Well, that is what I have for you today. So
Oh,
I'm glad
thank you,
we've
Matt.
gotten you re-engaged and excited about Thanksgiving.
you did. You actually made me realize. I never really cared about Thanksgiving that much because it was like you don't get presents. So who cares, right? Yeah. Thank you, Owen.
I'm gonna go home and roast a chicken.
There you
Nerd.
go.
See now, roast chicken.
Chickens are good.
I
Chickens
can't.
are
I'm not
good.
going to get in the argument turkey over chicken. I love them both. I don't love one more than the other.
That's fine.
I love them both. I think they're both delicious.
People
What
do
came
enjoy
first?
both.
May I remind you, Royal Farms is one of my favorite places
Oh, yeah,
to go,
absolutely.
and it's a gas station with chicken.
Fine fried chicken.
Oh, very
God,
fun,
yes.
folks. If you ever get near a Royal Farms, stop, do a U-turn, whatever. Go there and get the chicken. You'll
Get
thank me.
the chicken.
Yeah, they're only in like what
Addressing
this
Gettysburg, brought
area
to you
in
by Royal
Maryland.
Farms.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I wish. I wish. I would charge them like a reasonable rate, but then
I
I'd
would
say,
sit here and
but then
eat-
give me half of that in chicken.
I would sit here and eat a bucket of chicken every episode.
As a sponsor.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On camera. Just sit here like some morbidly obese, disgusting human being,
Yep.
shoveling fried chicken into my mouth.
It's Veronica's News brought to you by Royal Farms, and here's Veronica with a chicken tenders
Remember when
break.
TVs used to have that picture-in-picture function?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we could do that where the picture in the picture
Is you eating?
me eating Royal Farms.
I love that.
Just mowing down on some
Absolutely.
Can we just do that anyway?
Get the bucket on
Like,
a
I mean, we
That's
can, but you
yeah.
gotta like keep feeding me chicken.
Well, I'll just get you like a whole bunch of
fine.
chicken, and
That's
we'll just
fine.
stick a camera in front of you and
yeah,
just sit there.
absolutely, I'll do that.
Put the bucket on a pedestal. So
Play it on a
I'll
loop.
leave like the little bits of breading in my beard and everything.
We're doing that on Sunday. Cancel your plans. That's what we're doing. Oh, that's
You
fun.
heard it here first.
Oh, I can't wait to see that. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something, of course. And Matt, thank you very much for your due diligence this entire year doing all these holiday shows.
It's been my pleasure, Matt. Thank
Yeah.
you for having me. I really do enjoy coming on here and sharing this. So.
Oh, we like having you, and I know the listeners like it when you're on because I see the comments, I get the emails, and so far I haven't heard one bad thing about you.
Wow. Okay.
Plenty of bad things about me, but not about you. And Owen. A lot of bad things about Owen. Yeah. Sorry, Owen. Well, they don't think you're a confident enough clapper yet. So.
It's too late.
Yeah, it's too late.
Okay. They're going to cut that one out.
Yeah. But no, seriously, thank you very much for doing that, Matt. And then also, I'm looking forward to what we might do for the next year because I think what we were talking about last time after
we'll keep discussing that.
I think that would be very interesting to people.
Good.
And
Very
then
good.
the following year, we do the other guys.
Oh. Now that would be interesting.
That would be.
Okay.
Yes. Because, can't have one without the other. Anyway, folks, thank you very much for listening. We hope you have a very happy Thanksgiving. And, hey, may I say, we are very thankful for all of you.
That we are.
He did it. Yeah.
The patrons.
I'll clap to that one.
All of you guys, our sponsors. Thank you very much. You've made it a great year for us, a fantastic year. And we can't thank you enough. And I know I always say that, but it really is true. We really cannot thank you enough. So thank you. Good night.
Au revoir.
There you go. You got the last fucking French word in there, didn't you?
Did. Had to be done.
Our hearts so stout have got us fame, for soon 'tis known from whence we came. Wherever we go, they dread the name of Gary Owen in glory. Instead of spa, we'll drink down ale and pay the reckoning on the nail. No man forget shall go to jail from Gary Owen in glory. Instead of spa, we'll drink down ale and pay the reckoning on the nail.